One of the most important jobs that a farmer's entrusted with is being a good steward of the ground. If we don't take care of it, it won't take care of us. I grew up in northeast Kansas, up around Hiawatha. I moved out here when I was 15 years old. Of course, the different climates are considerably different between northeast Kansas and out here. You know, when they talk about inches of precipitation back there, we get excited about tenths out here.
Every time we get a rain, that doesn't mean it's going to rain again, right? You know, we may get a quarter inch of rain and we may not see another rain cloud for 3 months. That could happen. Water is one of the first things we think about each and every day. It is not an initiative that we take on as a one-off. It is a fundamental way of doing business.
The fundamental water issue out here is that there is one source of supply. There's not much rain, there isn't surface water to speak of, it's underground. It's the Ogallala Aquifer. In a sense, and in a very real sense, it's finite. There is some recharge, but there is so much more being pulled out than is ever going back in that it's been mined, frankly. And so every year with use, there's less and less and less in the aquifer. Most of Kansas relies on agriculture for the economy, and the lion's share of the use of this groundwater, 85% plus, is irrigated agriculture. Now we're at a critical stage where western Kansas needs to use water differently to extend the life of that aquifer and keep the economy going. If we don't change what we're doing, it's going to run dry.
So my name is Ryan Ferguson. I'm a district conservationist with NRCS. I've been on with NRCS for 6 years now. Personally, I saw an opportunity to gain some perspective on, one of the big challenges in the state of Kansas right now, and that's groundwater management. There's so many food products that are produced in this part of the state. They rely on groundwater for both irrigation of crops, livestock, watering needs, but then also these rural communities. And that's really the big challenge here, is helping improve the resource for everybody in the community. It's not just the growers, it's not just the producers, it's the whole community. The challenges out here really impact all Kansans, and losing the agricultural production out here would be a really big hit to our economy.
So over 100 years ago, a lot of farmers and homesteaders came out to this area and they began to farm. We found that we had a huge subterranean water source known as the Ogallala Aquifer. And in the early days, we didn't have appropriation. We had no way to measure to know what was down there. We've since learned from using science, the Kansas Geological Survey, we have finite amounts of water in the region. In fact, it's a little more complicated than that. If you take an egg crate and flip it kind of sideways underneath the ground and fill it with sand, that's a good idea of what the subsurface geology is of an aquifer. You'll have these localized pockets of water, but when they get full enough, they migrate between them. And as they deplete, they'll pocket in their pools based upon the underlying geology. So what we have out here in this region, we have pockets of water that are still very, very good. And we have some areas that are very, very depleted, and yet everybody who's using the surface rights are all wanting the same outcomes. That desire to have uniform outcomes but not having the same amount of water underneath the ground is kind of what becomes the contentious thing, is that all producers want to end up essentially having the same lifestyles and have the same outcomes, but the truth is the water under their feet are not the same. That kind of gave us some areas of targeted focus to go in and continue to do more studies. It took us a while to understand what mechanisms are recharging the aquifer, which ones aren't recharging the aquifer, where is it finite, where are there bigger depths, and then ultimately that came into management.
The groundwater management districts were created in the 1970s when it was known that in areas of groundwater use that there were depletion problems, and they needed local input on how to manage a challenging water resource, whether it was depleting quickly or slowly because they behaved differently. But there were 5 areas that were created, 5 different groundwater management districts, so that local input could inform and advise and support managing and extending the life of those aquifers.
My name is Katie Durham. I'm the district manager at Western Kansas Groundwater Management District No. 1 in Scott City, Kansas. So I handle a lot of the day-to-day work. Any of producer issues that come through the door, we help with water right assistance, any sort of applications for change of place of use or correspondent, and then general policy work on the local level. We work with our locally enhanced management areas and our water conservation areas as well, and just really try to provide services to any producer that comes through our door. You have huge swaths of the state that are completely dependent on groundwater, and then only a couple hundred miles away you have an abundance of surface water in certain areas. And I think that that creates a dynamic where individualized solutions are going to work best when it comes to policy implementation. And so that's why we really try to focus on the local control aspect, because what is going to work for GMD1 it's not going to necessarily work for GMD2 or GMD5 or any of the others, because we're just so different in so many respects. Prior to the ability for the locally enhanced management areas to be implemented, the groundwater management districts did not have a whole lot of tools necessarily when it came to policy that restricted water use on a temporary basis. That law change in 2012 really changed the game when it came to how groundwater districts function, because it gave them the ability to develop local policies that then become legally binding once approved by the chief engineer. Everyone recognized that we needed to do something to address the decline in the aquifer, but they really just wanted to make sure that it was fair and it was economically viable, and that everyone was a part of the process in putting those plans together. And therefore, the creation of the WCAs and the LEMAs, which really have a grassroots focus to them.
So what a water conservation area, a WCA, is purely voluntary. Anyone with a water right or any group of water right owners can get together and say, I'm going to cut back my use in exchange for flexibility. So water rights right now is a maximum quantity you can use each calendar year. If you enter a WCA, then you can say, let's talk, right? And so you get a 5-year agreement with the state, and they'll take your annual authorized quantity times 5, and you can use it over 5 years. So you can save it in 1 year, and if you need more the next year, you have it sort of in the bank. So that flexibility is something that producers really need and can really help. Some years there's a lot of rain, some years there's really bad drought. The outcome, however, the end net use is going to be less. You have to agree that the whole total is going to be less. So it's less use than you would have been using before. A LEMA, a local enhanced management area, is another state level tool. That's where a local group of users in a groundwater management district can come together and say, we know we need to cut back, and we don't want the state telling us how to do it. So here's our plan for what we're going to do. This is how much less we're going to use. These are going to be the enforcement mechanisms, and they ask the state to approve it. And if the state approves it, then it's temporary, 5 years, but it applies to everybody in the LEMA. A LEMA will be a geographic area. So even if you didn't want it, that's your new rule for 5 years.
I probably had several hundred one-on-one conversations with people that would come into the office. There was a comment that was made to me one time that kind of stuck with me, and there was a producer that came in and we were talking, and he was pretty upset about the concept of doing these LEMAs. And when it all boiled down to it, he just said, I just want to be heard. And I'll never forget that, because it was really just an opportunity to sit back and just listen and just hear out what the concerns were. And as we worked through them, I just saw this kind of relief in him, and it just became a much more comfortable conversation. And I would consider him to be more of a proponent of the LEMAs now.
If a producer comes in with groundwater depletion concerns, we sit down with them and we start to develop a conservation plan. So that's where we'll actually go to the field with the customer, evaluate the conditions of those resources in the field. When we think about groundwater depletion and management, it takes the whole management system into consideration. It's not just about how much water are we using or how much water do we need.
But just because the soils are different out here doesn't mean it's not productive. We have very, very productive soils out here. That's obvious, or we wouldn't be able to grow what we do with as little as we have. There's two basic things that a lot of irrigators have adopted right away. First off, some moisture probes to give you an idea of what kind of content you got within the ground, your soil profile, whether you're overwatering, you're underwatering. That way you get just a quick snapshot of where you're at with your crop. The second aspect is telemetry that's on the end of the pivots. As far as an AgSense system, or there's several different ones. It's a very easy way to check and see. You got an ID on it. You can look on your phone, your iPad, your computer, and you can see at any time, day or night, where that system is, what kind of pressure it's carrying, and that it is operating as it ought to be.
I've just been impressed with both the capability of the technology, but also the adoption. It seems like we have a lot of growers that are utilizing that technology, and it's paying off for them because they're using less water, using less energy, and they're still growing healthy crops.
We couldn't do what we do today without all those technologies in place and all the people helping. It's more management and you got to be on, but when it's all set up and running, it works really well.
When it comes to total water savings within the plans, I mean, we've really started to see some positive data. They are currently exceeding their savings goals. The Wichita County LEMA had a savings goal of about 25% reductions per point of diversion, and we're seeing that they've really exceeded that to the point where the Wichita County as a whole has reduced pumping by about 39%. So that's just a really remarkable number and shows that these programs are working, they are effective.
I think really, education, outreach, and just, having conversations with your neighbors or with, your producers in your community, that's really how we're going to spread the awareness and hopefully see more adoption of more efficient systems when it comes to irrigation and groundwater utilization. So I think really if there was a barrier, it's just a lack of awareness to the resources that are available.
I would personally invite anyone who wants to learn more about water resources in Kansas to reach out to just your local NRCS or your local conservation district or your local groundwater management district. There is so much information out there. We really want to put a lot of emphasis on education and outreach, and so please reach out, go to a board meeting, attend a conference, and just don't be afraid to ask questions. These resources are just imperative to the success of our future communities, and we want to make all of these resources amply available.
Ag producers are very much in tune with their legacy, with looking 2 or 3 generations down the line to say, what can I do today to make sure that the resources I have today, that I'm stewarding those and I'm taking good care of them for the next generations. And we have to be able to use technologies, use the experts in the area and the resources we have to make sure that 20, 30, 40 years from now, these businesses are still thriving, they're still viable, they still have all of the functionality that they were meant to possess, and you always have to have access to fresh water that's properly taken care of. And we want to do all that we can today to make sure that happens in the future.